Guten Abend, meine Freunde, und willkommen to Monday Night Travel. This evening, we are going to whisk ourselves off to the German capital, Berlin, for a walk in the historic center, and then we are going to a hidden neighborhood, Prenzlauer Berg. Okay, I'm very happy to say, as you saw in the intro and maybe other places, that we are not going to Berlin alone. We have a veteran guide that we have been recommending for many years joining us. His enthusiasm and knowledge of Berlin are immense. Please join me in welcoming Jeremy Minsberg. Hi, Jeremy, and welcome to Monday Night Travel.
Guten Abend from Berlin.
There you are. Guten Abend. How are you doing, and what time is it there?
It is 3 o'clock in the morning here in Berlin.
Incredible. Well, thank you, Jeremy, for getting up and tuning in with us. Now, I detect you're not a native German. Is that true?
I'm actually American. I'm from St. Paul, Minnesota, and I've been coming to Berlin since 1981. The first time I came, my cousin was stationed in the U.S. military here, and so I kept on coming back to Berlin and coming back to Berlin after all these years. And finally, in 2000, I made the jump and moved to Germany. So I've been here for 25 years. And I've been a private tour guide for almost 20 years here in Germany.
Incredible. And Jeremy, what do you like or what do you love about Berlin? How did it become your city?
I love Berlin because for the first 5 years I was here, I didn't have a work visa. So I did volunteer work for all these different organizations. And my favorite volunteer work was in an old Jewish home for the aged. And what I used to do is I used to bring pictures of what Berlin looked like before the war. And I would basically talk to the people about bringing pictures of what Berlin was like before the war. And I'd say, tell me what it was. And so that's where I got the best stories that I had was from eyewitness accounts. Because it was a saying in Berlin before the war, if you couldn't read the street signs, you couldn't tell if you were in Paris or Berlin. This city was so beautiful before the war.
Hmm. And you've lived in the same neighborhood for quite a while, haven't you?
I've been in the same apartment for almost 24 years, and Germans don't move very often because there's very strict rent control here. So I
Hmm.
rented my apartment in the dumpiest neighborhood in the city 24 years ago, and now it's become the trendiest neighborhood in the city. And I've not had a rent increase in 24 years.
No rent increase in 24 years. Well, maybe I should make an investment and move to a nice neighborhood in Berlin.
Germans don't move very often.
Amazing. Now, I understand that you have a few treats to share with us. Is that right?
Yes, I do. I have, for first of all, when you come to Germany, the things you should be eating pretzels. This is something that is very, 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 very yummy at this time of the year. They eat them with cheese sauce and they eat them with all these different types of things. And they come in many different shapes and sizes. They come in long ones, they come in traditional sizes. And people come to Germany because Germans want to have bread. And Germans, there's over 2,000 different kinds of bread in Germany. So there's all these different kinds of bread here. And especially the thing that people want to come to Germany this time of the year for is white asparagus. This is something that is only in season for 8 weeks a year, from April 20th until June 20th. And they serve this with hollandaise sauce and potatoes and sometimes with meat on the side of it. But this is a treat. This is something that people come to Germany, my clients come to Germany often just to eat this. It's very unusual. And my favorite highlight this time of the year are strawberries. This is the strawberries that people want to come to Germany for. The strawberries are unbelievable this time of the year. My niece was just here. She came, I think, just for the strawberries. Yeah, strawberries here are unbelievable. So the food here in Germany is a whole part of the experience of coming to the city and coming to Berlin.
And we actually can present here. I'm just going to go back on this. We can share what the strawberries actually look like, or the stand where you buy them actually looks like. Let's see. I'm just gonna, yeah, there we are.
There
Now
it is.
this is like, it's like a yellow submarine. No, it's a red submarine. So this is the traditional strawberry stand. Is that correct?
Right. There's hundreds of these all over northern Germany. and they sell them, and there are lines as soon as they come out. There are lines of them because these are so everyone is so excited to have them, and the quality of strawberries is absolutely amazing.
I love strawberries. It's actually the strawberry season here, but I don't have strawberries. I have a version of a kebab. So I've been waiting to eat this for 2 hours because the kebab is popular in Berlin as well, isn't it, Jeremy?
Kebabs and döners, they have all sorts of different kinds of kebabs, different types of ones. If you're going to the Turkish neighborhoods or the Arab neighborhoods, everyone has a different kind of a kebab with different kinds of meat or vegetarian. They have all sorts of different versions of the kebabs that for everyone to eat.
Well, I'm going to get us started then and also find a moment to dig into that a little bit. Shall we start our walking tour, Jeremy? So, why don't you orient us with the plan, Jeremy? We're starting in the historic center. We're going to walk down the main drag, visit Museum Island, and then visit your neighborhood. Is that right?
Correct. When people first arrive, they arrive to the main train station on the upper left hand of the station. It's called the Hauptbahnhof. It's the main train station of Berlin. And then they come into the government quarter called the Reichstag area and the chancellor's office. And then they go to the Brandenburg Gate area and the Memorial for the Murdered Jews. And then they walk up the street to the Unter den Linden, the famous Royal Boulevard of Germany, all the way up to the Museum Island. And this is the old, gorgeous center part of the city where the buildings are beautiful. Everything is 4 or 5 stories tall. And many of the buildings did survive the war, so they're in original condition and they're really beautiful buildings in this area here. This is what people think of European cities should look like, is what you find in this area.
And this is a form of a walking tour. This is actually a map of our central Berlin city walk from the Berlin guidebook.
Correct.
And yes, it covers just one section of the city because Berlin is very large. Is that
Yes.
true, Jeremy? You said it was what, 36 miles from one end to another?
Off in each direction. In 1920, after World War I, all the suburbs got together and said, why are we fighting for duplication of police, fire, sewer, water? So they incorporated the entire county. Berlin is 30 miles in each direction. And it's basically an east-west city. It's not a north-south city. And it's a very, very large city, and it's 28% green. And just like most European cities, the wealthy live on the west sides of many European cities. The poor live on the east historically
Hmm.
because they didn't have sewer systems, so that the smells on the eastern side of the cities were horrible. And everyone's burning everything to heat their homes and to cook their food. So the wealthy side of the city, where in the lower left, it says city west. That's
Hmm.
historically where the wealthy people lived, and the north and the northeast, that's where the poorer people were living historically before the war.
Hmm. And here again, we see that we're focusing on the historic core before going to Prenzlauer Berg in the north.
Correct. Right. And that's the
And
neighborhood.
the population of Berlin is it 2 or 3 million, something like this?
It's 4 million today.
Oh, incredible. Wow. Yeah, very large. And we talked a bit about what's special about visiting Berlin at this time of year. When would you suggest that a traveler visit your city?
Berlin is a great time to visit any time of the year because if you come in the winter months, if you're coming for museums and inside things, it's a great time to come in the winter months because there's no lines for anything. It's cold, but it's cozy, and the Christmas markets are taking place. In springtime, the weather is lovely, the plants are blooming, there's fewer crowds. In summertime, the days are incredibly long because in summertime is we're 52 degrees north here. So the
Mhm.
summertime here, it's only dark here 4 or 5 hours a night here. The parks are beautiful, and it's peak tourist season. And in the fall, there's lots of cultural events, and it's golden leaves and it's crisp air. It's the Germans say there's no bad weather, there's just wrong clothing. So it's a great time to visit Berlin any time of the year, depending on what you'd like to do.
And now, what's the story with the Berlin airport? Because, of course, Frankfurt I associate as being like the biggest airport in Germany, but the Berlin airport was going to be redone. Is that right?
Berlin used to have 3 airports when I arrived here in Berlin. Then they closed one and went to 2 airports. Now they've closed that one, and now we're at one major airport. And the Berlin airport was supposed to open 10 years ago, but with
Mhm.
lots of confusion and delays, it opened about 5 years ago. It's southeast of the city. It's a beautiful new airport, but it does take about an hour to get to the airport from the center of the city. You can either take a train there, you can take a bus there, you can have a rental car there. It's very, very convenient to get in and out of the airport. It's just a little bit of a distance from the city. And a taxi is about 75 US dollars to get to the airport from the center of the city.
And in terms of what to book ahead, now there aren't as many things that need to be reserved ahead as in Rome or Venice, for example, but there are a couple of sites that should be reserved ahead. Reichstag and Museum Island. Is that true as well?
Correct. If you'd like to go to the Reichstag Dome is one of the most important things in Berlin with a beautiful view of the entire city. Architecturally, it's one of the most beautiful pieces in the entire city. That is something you have to book in advance, and sometimes it's not available. So you have to really, hopefully, it's available. That is worthwhile. And some of the museums on Museum Island during high season are worthwhile to book in advance also. So you can make sure you get a ticket for the day you'd want to go. So there's a few things that are worthwhile to book in advance, but certainly the Reichstag, because the Reichstag is the equivalent of going to the US Capitol. So you do need to have a little bit of security check before you go in. So you have to apply in advance. You just can't show up to the building. And it is the best, my opinion, it's one of the best pieces of architecture in the entire city.
And we're going to see more of it later. And there is a pass for museums in Berlin, and I believe it's a good value if you're seeing more than a few museums on the museum island. Would you agree?
Right. There's the museum pass. They have it for 24, 48, 72 hours. It's great if you're planning on going to many museums. It doesn't offer free entrance to museums. It only offers a discount. So it's great if you're planning on visiting a lot of museums. If you're only visiting a few, it probably isn't worth it. And it also depends on where you stay because the pass gives you free transit. So if you're staying in the center of the city, this is a walking city, so you don't really need to take, you might not need to take the public transportation. You're able to walk everywhere. So it's just if it depends on where you're staying and how many museums you'd like to visit.
In terms of paying for things during your stay, I was surprised when you shared that cash is preferred at many places in Berlin. Is that true as well, Jeremy? Because so many places in Central, Western, Northern Europe are switching to card.
In Europe, in Germany, cash is king still. The only thing that most Germans only use credit cards when they travel. It's an age thing. Younger Germans are beginning to use credit cards and ATM and debit cards. Older Germans do not. So really, the only places that accept credit cards in Germany are for tourists. So when you're coming to, let's say, my neighborhood or other neighborhoods in the city, you have to have cash. You
Mhm.
have to have euros cash. It's best to use ATMs that are attached to a bank.
Mhm.
Try not to bring actual cash because the exchange banks in the city charge a great deal of money to change the money. So it's an ATM is always best and let your bank know that you're coming to Germany.
And in terms of where to stay, you can be in the center, but there are other great neighborhoods like yours that are very accessible, and we've listed a few of them here.
Right. It depends on what people are looking for. If you're interested in staying in the old historic district of the city, where all the history and the most walking area in the city, that's the middle section of the city, the Mitte section of the city. It's more like a downtown area, but it's where again all the history is and all the beautiful buildings are. There's Prenzlauer Berg, that is the neighborhood in which I live in. That's more of a cultural neighborhood, lots of old buildings in the city. If you're looking for nightlife, Kreuzberg and Friedrichshain, that's where the young people like to stay. That's where all the nightlife is. And if you're into the shopping side, that's Charlottenburg on the west side. In Berlin, you stay on the west side of the city if you want to go shopping. If you want to stay in the east or the center of the city, if you're more here for history.
Aha, very good advice. Thank you, Jeremy. And being such a large city, sometimes you may not want to walk to every place that you're interested in visiting. So there is solid and reliable public transit via bus, tram, and train. And can you use one ticket for all forms of transit, or do you need different tickets?
Public transportation here is one of the beautiful things in Berlin. They have buses, trains, trams, ferries. They have everything. You can buy a day pass for approximately 10 euros, about $10. The trains go almost everywhere in the city. And the easiest way to tell when you're in the former East or in West Berlin is West Berlin has buses, East Berlin has streetcars, the trams.
Ah, okay. Um,
You get a ticket, one ticket, a day passes is in the center of the city. The A and B ticket is valid for the entire center of the city. It's an incredible value. You can use it for 24 hours and it's only $10. And you
mhm.
can take as much public transportation as you want. If you are coming from the airport, you do have to buy an A, B, and C ticket, which is a little bit different ticket. But the most important thing about buying tickets for trains in Germany and in Berlin is you have to buy them and then validate them. It's a two-step system. So just because you bought it, it's not valid. So you have to
Mhm.
buy it and then stamp it.
Okay. Yeah. Validation is very important to remember. And, the history in Berlin is so dramatic and powerful. I'm going to let you take us through this section of the presentation, Jeremy.
This
Would you please?
one of my favorite maps in the city because you're able to see, for those of you who don't speak German, black is almost 100% destruction, red is 50% destruction. So starting in 1942, this is from southwest to northeast. You can see exactly how the planes were flying from southwest over the center of the city. They were aiming for the whole center of the city where the Nazi government was in the center of the city. They were aiming for those buildings in the center of the city. So 80 to 90% of the center city was destroyed.
Hmm.
And there's one part just near the center of the city where there are no bombs. That's Berlin Central Park. There were no buildings there. And just like most European cities and many European cities, again, the wealthy live on the west sides, the poor live on the east sides. So by looking at this map, you can see there was more destruction on the west side than on the east side. So the neighborhood in which I live in called Prenzlauer Berg, is north of the city. So my neighborhood survived the war almost completely intact. This map shows how the city was divided during World War II, where they were divided into four pieces. The French had two districts, the British three districts, the Americans four districts, and the Soviets seven districts. So the eastern part of the city went to the Soviets, the western part of the city went to the Commonwealth Allies. And when you get to meet older people in Berlin, you'll notice people who are living in the former East will speak Russian, or people in the former West will speak English or French, depending on where you were raised. So, and this history is the star here in Berlin. Berlin has the best and the worst of everything in the last 100 years. The city is not the prettiest city, but it's the heart of Berlin's darkest moments where Europe was, and it was to rebuild the cities after the war. It's a city of ruins and rebirth. The Berlin has been destroyed, divided, rebuilt again and again. And each version of the city lives in the streets. The city is not a pretty city like when you go to Paris or Prague. Those are beautiful cities. Berlin is not pretty. Here, the history is the star. You're coming to Berlin to see the history because you don't just visit museums, you come to see the bullet holes, preserved ruins, and the memorials built into the buildings. And this shows a map of Germany, what it looked like before World War II. At the end of World War II, the yellowish piece on the east side was taken away. That was given to Poland. And the northeast part was given to the Soviet Union. So Germany lost 25% of its land at the end of World War II. And Berlin used to be in the center of the country. Now it's in the eastern part of the country. And you can see how the country was divided. So Berlin was divided into four pieces, and Germany was divided into four pieces at the end of World War II.
Yeah, I was just going to say something very similar, Jeremy, that Berlin is almost a microcosm of Germany, that the country was divided and the capital city was divided as
Exactly.
well.
Exactly. And this lasted until the 1990s, for 45 years after the war.
Yeah, so this is recent history.
Correct. Yeah. That's the one thing that's fun about coming to Berlin, because all the history in Berlin is basically, it's a place it feels unfinished, because there's so much history in every single corner, and everything is basically that was done with video. There's movies, and it's been in the last 100 years, and it's the best. And the city is an onion because you come to one neighborhood, you look at something, you peel off an onion, there's 14 more layers underneath it. And even on my day off, when I get together with colleagues and we do exploring in the city, because even though I've been a guide for 20 years, I'm finding new things every single day in the city. And that's why the city is so interesting. If people are history buffs, love coming to Berlin because history is again the star here.
And we're going to see history around every corner when we visit your neighborhood shortly as well.
Right, correct, right.
Well,
right.
Jeremy, let's go to our walking tour now, and we'll start where many people arrive in the city center, the Hauptbahnhof, which is just an incredible building. What I think Rick calls it a postmodern temple of slick transportation.
Correct. It's located on the former death strip where the Berlin Wall used to stand. It's 5 levels of tracks. It's a vertical city of movement. And in Germany, there's still blue laws on Sundays. All stores are closed on Sundays in Germany. Train stations are exempt. So it looks like basically a train station attached to a shopping mall. Berlin used to be like Paris or London before the war, where it had 5 or 6 different train stations. And when Berlin became a unified city in the 1990s, they built one central train station. So it's an enormous facility. It's all glass. And the whole concept is it's designed to bring in natural light and about being transparent. And you arrive to the train station and it's transparent the moment you arrive. 300,000 people use the station every day. And right outside the front of the station, there are remnants of the wall, usually in different places, right there, because it was built right where the Berlin Wall used to be.
And you've provided us with, once we'll move on from the strawberries, you've provided us with a short video of the interior. Because, oh, and here, see, you can go to Warsaw direct. Hundreds and hundreds of trains a day. That's one of the great things about Berlin and Germany, that transportation system.
In the station, all the east-west trains are upstairs. All the north-south trains are in the basement. And there's 8 sets of tracks upstairs, 8 sets of tracks in the basement. And it's very, very user-friendly. People don't have to get worried when they come to the station because it's so easy to understand and the signage is excellent. And there's helpful stands everywhere, and there's helpful people everywhere in the station. In the airport also, there's plenty of people everywhere to help you if you're not sure where you're supposed to be going and where you're doing.
And nearby, this is the Reichstag, which we mentioned earlier as benefiting from a reservation because you can go up to the dome and have a great view.
Correct. The Reichstag is the upper house of the German parliament. The name of the building is called the Reichstag. The name of the organization that meets inside of it is called the Bundestag. That's like saying Congress meets in the Capitol. The Bundestag meets in the Reichstag. The building was bombed during World War II, very, very heavily damaged, and it was left a derelict building during the Cold War. It was rebuilt with a stunning glass dome by Norman Foster. That's why it's one of my favorite things I recommend to people to do in the city. The view upstairs and the ramp, it's like going up to the Guggenheim. It's a beautiful ramp and it's a lovely view. And it's free. You don't have to pay to even go inside of it, but you just have to pre-register. And there's 2 types you can just visit the roof of the building to get the view, or you can take a tour of the inside of the building. And the tour of the inside of the building, if you're a history buff, is totally worthwhile. The tour inside is spectacular because the building talks about the history of the good and the bad history of what was going on in Berlin.
The exterior of it is dramatic as well.
This is
What are we looking at here, Jeremy?
You're looking at the chancellor's office. In the government quarter, you have all three forms of government. You have the executive branch, the parliamentary branch. So it's all right there. And that's the chancellor's office. We have a new chancellor in Germany named Merz. His office is on the top right floor of the building. Germans nickname a lot of their buildings, so they refer to this building as the Federal Washing Machine because it looks like a front-loading washing machine. The Berliners nickname all their buildings here. And that's where the Chancellor of Germany is. And right across is where the Member of Parliaments have their offices, and then the Reichstag. And all these buildings have been redone, and they're all glass because the entire buzzword in the German government is transparency, transparency, transparency. The only solid walls in any of these buildings are closets or toilets.
Hmm.
Beautiful, stunning buildings. And especially even at nighttime, they're much more beautiful to even see them at nighttime. And this is a picture of the Reichstag at the end of the war. And this is a picture I took inside the Reichstag because in 1945, when you take the behind the scenes tour of the building, the Russians wrote graffiti, the Soviets wrote graffiti all over the inside of the building in 1945 when they conquered Berlin. And you can imagine it's not very nice what they wrote. And during the renovation of the building in the 1990s, they left all the graffiti on the building. So this is on almost every wall behind the scenes. And to see this is very, very, very dramatic. And a good tour guide who runs inside the building can explain to you what is written by these people.
Because, yeah, as you mentioned, the Reichstag was built in the 1890s and then it burned in 1993 and then it was redone in 1999, I believe.
Burned in 33 and then it was redone in 1999. Right. And they brought a British architect. They had a worldwide design competition, and Norman Foster won the design for the building. So, and it's one of the only, you can stand at the front door and see who's speaking at the podium. Because again, the whole idea of transparency is super important to the German government. Everything has to be transparent here in Berlin.
And again, all of these sites are within walking distance, including the symbol of Berlin, the Brandenburg Gate.
The Brandenburg Gate was built in the 1790s. It was the royal gate. The royal family went in and out of the city. That's why when you look at the picture, the middle part of the gate is wider than the rest of that because it was reserved for the royal family until 1918. So when you walk through the gate, you should only walk through the middle of it because you can. Because until 1918, you couldn't do that. It was reserved for the royal family. And Berlin was a walled city. Most European cities were walled. But Berlin was walled not for protection. This was a toll gate. You had to pay a tax to go in and out of the city. This is the symbol of the Germany because from 1961 to 1989, no one walked through the Brandenburg Gate because it was in the middle of no man's land. This was the place you could not walk. And when you look at European coins, they're all the same on the front, country specific on the back. On the back of all the German coins has the Brandenburg Gate on the gold ones.
And you've given us two looks here, one during the day.
Old flag is beautiful.
And then you'll explain what this is to us in a minute, the Brandenburg Gate at night.
Yep.
Wow. So what is this? Is this light show all year round, Jeremy? Is it just at certain times?
This is the Festival of Lights they have in October when it starts getting dark earlier. They take most of the most beautiful buildings in Berlin and they have light artists from around the world come and they shine the lights on all the different structures in Berlin. And the Brandenburg Gate is usually the center point of it. And it starts at like 5, 6 o'clock in the evening. It goes to 11 o'clock at night. And the lighting designs are spectacular and they're different every year. And many times they have music attached to it. So this is spectacular. It is one of the most fun times to be in Berlin is for the lighting festival in October.
I love it. It's beautiful. And now we're going to walk just a little bit further on our tour to a very powerful memorial, the Memorial of the Murdered Jews of Europe. We're going to hear about this from Rick because he does a very nice job. of explaining this site. So let's go to hear from Rick now.
In their attempt to exterminate the Jewish race, the Nazis killed 6 million Jews. Berlin's Holocaust Memorial is a touching and evocative field of gravestone-like pillars. Called the Memorial to the Murdered Jews of Europe, it was the first formal German government-sponsored Holocaust memorial.
When Germany called this a memorial to the murdered Jews, it was a big step. They admitted to a crime. They did it. The design of this memorial has no explicit meaning. It's hoped that each visitor will find their own.
There's no central gathering point. It's for individuals, like death. Once you enter the memorial, people seem to appear and then disappear. Is it a labyrinth? A symbolic cemetery? Intentionally disorienting? It's entirely up to you to derive the meaning while pondering this horrible chapter in human history.
Jeremy, do you have an interpretation of the design of the memorial? I'm just curious.
I was actually very lucky. I got to meet the architect at one point, and he said exactly what Rick said. He wanted everyone to feel disorientation walking through that, because that's what the Jews felt. It starts small, it gets very, very deep very quickly, it overwhelms you. And this is one of the only memorials in the world where you walk through, you don't walk to, you become a part of it. And you can walk through it it's open 24 hours. I encourage people to walk through it during daylight hours, in the evening, on a snowy day, a rainy day. You'll feel something different every time you walk this memorial. And the shadowing, the lighting is amazing. Its current location is right next door to the Brandenburg Gate. It's a documentation center is also underneath it, which is very important to visit. There's a museum underneath it, which takes about a half an hour to go through. It's free. And instead of the stones coming up from the ground up, they hang from the ceiling down. It's very, very, very dramatic. I think that's an A museum to visit in Berlin. And what's interesting about this, there's no names on anything. And everyone is designed to interpret this by their own. So it's a very unique memorial because everyone feels something different, but disorientation is the most important thing you're supposed to feel.
Yeah, you mentioned feeling overwhelmed as you go deeper into it, and I remember feeling exactly the same.
It's really good is when groups of people are walking through that, they should walk through it separately, not together.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And we have a little bit more Brandenburg here. This is you and was it Lily, your dog?
My dog Lila. Sometimes I bring my dog Lila on my tours with me also. She's a little miniature wire-haired dachshund.
And everything we've just talked about is fairly close together in the historic center. We're going to move east now along the main drag. It's called Unter den Linden, Jeremy. And what does that mean?
It's under the Linden trees. Under the Linden trees is the former Royal Boulevard. It was originally designed for troops marching up and down, walking down one side to the gate and turning around and walking back up. But these trees are called linden trees, and starting about now until, let's say, late July, the trees have an odor that smells like lilac bushes. And it is unbelievably fragrant. And it's basically the smell of Berlin. And it's absolutely the most beautiful boulevard in the entire city. Absolutely gorgeous, beautiful.
And my understanding is that a lot of the trees were cut down in the early part of the 20th century, so they're not very old.
Well, the Nazis cut them down in 1938 or 39 for a visit of someone, and the Berliners were not happy about that. But they just recently built a subway line from the Brandenburg Gate to the tall TV tower, and they had to cut many of the trees down to build the subway line, and they're being replanted now again. But it's almost every tree in the city was cut down and used for firewood at the end of World War II. This is one of the subway lines underneath the Linden Boulevard, and they've renamed it. The old name was Unter den Linden. The new name is called the Brandenburg Gate. Tor is the German word for gate.
And I remember hearing, correct me if I'm wrong, Jeremy, that at the subway lines where East Germany meets West Germany, they just like block them off. Do you know if that's true?
They had what was called ghost stations,
Mhm.
where the only people would be on these platforms because the trains went from one part of East Berlin, excuse me, one part of West Berlin underneath East Berlin to another part of West Berlin. And the only people who were on these platforms were East German guards with machine guns to make sure the trains did not stop at these stations. I was very lucky. I was here in 1981 and I took these stations and I went through Checkpoint Charlie in 1981.
Mhm.
I remember the difference between West Berlin and East Berlin because it was West Berlin looks like it does today. East Berlin looked like World War II ended 15 minutes ago.
Wow. Wow. And also on Unter den Linden is the largest embassy in Europe. Was the Soviet embassy, but it's the Russian embassy now.
It's one of the only embassies you can still see the hammer and the sickle on it. I've been inside the embassy twice with our tour guide association. The embassy is gorgeous on the inside. It's not open to the public right now. The building is one of the preeminent locations on the Unter den Linden Boulevard. And anybody who's seen the movie Bridge of Spies, there's few scenes in the movie are supposed to take place in this building. So it's definitely worthwhile to see this building along the way. This is the famous Gendarmenmarkt, the famous plaza where there is the German cathedral and then the French cathedral. And this plaza was all built for religious tolerance. There's one church on one side, one church on the other side, and in the middle, the most beautiful concert hall in the city. And this is where, during the wintertime, this is where the nicest Christmas market is, the most beautiful Christmas market in the city. And during the summertime, they have concerts here most evenings. It is spectacular to visit this plaza. This is what old Europe looks like.
Hmm. We're gradually moving east and we're running into Museum Island there, that second circular area. So let's talk a bit about that because as the capital of Germany, of course, Berlin has top-rate museums. There were five museums, correct, Jeremy, associated with museums.
Yeah, there were originally five museums on Museum Island. It's one of the only things that's under UNESCO Heritage Protection from the United Nations. The German government is spending an enormous amount of money to renovate these buildings because the buildings were heavily destroyed during World War II, and they need an enormous amount of money to rebuild them and put them together. And they've also just rebuilt the former royal palace called the Humboldt Forum. And so that's on Museum Island also. So previously there were five museums on Museum Island. Today there are 10. And Berlin has 200 museums, over 200 museums in the city. If there's a museum for someone for everyone in the city, the collections here are spectacular.
And this is the National Gallery, which houses some of the most important German art
Correct.
pieces.
German Romantic collections are in that.
And it
Correct.
also has European pieces. For example, this is a Monet French Impression piece.
Exactly. It has some lovely, lovely collections. Berlin has some of the best art collections. They're comparable to what you find in Paris and New York. Amazing museums in the city here.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Jeremy, because I know that Berlin, as the capital of Germany, has some great museums, but I don't think of it as a museum city, but in fact, it is.
It is. Oh, it definitely is. Yeah, absolutely. And this shows the cathedral on Museum Island, designed and built by the last Kaiser of Germany. And it's a gorgeous, gorgeous church, extremely ornate on the inside. It's a Protestant cathedral right on the Museum Island, and it stands right next to the former royal palace. And the building you see in front of us, that was built as the first freestanding museum in the world in 1828. And that's where the royal German family, Northern German family, used to keep their art collections. And that's on the Museum Island. And the Museum Island is about a mile long and about 3 or 4 blocks wide. And that's also the plaza where Hitler gave his speeches in Berlin, when he gave his speeches in Berlin.
Mm. And then the view of the Berlin Cathedral. You pay, I believe it's 10 euro, if I'm not mistaken. Last time I checked, maybe it's gone up, but that includes the 270 odd stairs to an excellent platform.
Right. It's another lovely viewpoint of the city is to go into the cathedral. The lovely, lovely view from the top of there. There's 7 or 8 different places you can go for a wonderful view over Berlin. This is a beautiful, if you like church architecture, this is spectacular. From the view on top is spectacular. And the domes are new domes. They're not the original domes. The original domes were, again, destroyed during the war. And this is the German History Museum. This is special exhibits of the German History Museum in IMP building. This is one of my personal favorite buildings in the city. They have great exhibits in this building. The German History Museum is my favorite museum in the city. It's going to be closed for about 1 more year for renovation. They're putting all new exhibits in the building. And these buildings connected together are spectacular. Some of my favorite collections in the city for people who really want to dive more into German history. And they have fun things in the German Museum also. It's not just all serious. They do have fun things in these museums. So, I mean, they have things that Germany's famous for, like Volkswagens, and they have history of all these different kinds of crazy products that Germany has created over the years, and really wonderful design products that have come from this country over the years.
And next up, we have something very important.
Nefertiti. This is the most famous piece of art in the city. It's over 2,500 years old. It's from Egypt. She's not very big. She's about this tall. She's not very big, but when you see her and you think the technology they had at that time, how they could make something so beautiful and so realistic, it's breathtaking. This is a must see. This is an A plus for people who are coming to Berlin. They must see her. She is it's the center point of design and art for Berlin.
I think it might be the most important Egyptian art piece in all of Europe, in fact.
I think you're probably right. The collection here, the collections and museums here are spectacular.
Well, that was Museum Island. So you see, we've gone from Brandenburg, the Reichstag, and the memorial across Unter den Linden to Museum Island. And now we're going to hop over to your neighborhood, Jeremy. So you can give us a local tour. And how would we get to your neighborhood, in fact? You can see it's in the direction of the northeast off the screen.
The neighborhood's easy to get to because you can just walk there. It's either walking there or you can take an underground line. Berlin has two different underground systems. One of the underground lines goes right to the neighborhood. The U2 subway line goes right to the neighborhood. Or one of the tram lines go right to the neighborhood. The M2 line goes to the neighborhood. And it's very, very easily accessible. Everything in this part of the city is walkable. In Berlin, there are no natural hills in Berlin. That's why Berlin is such an easy city to be in, because there are no hills in the city, very, very easily to walk or bike. A lot of times people rent bicycles. The total bike friend. There are more bicycles in Berlin than cars.
And we're actually going to take a walking tour in your neighborhood as well. So we'll visit some of the most interesting sites in your area. And this is also a walking tour in the Berlin guidebook, because, you know, not every city in Europe has its own guidebook from Rick Steves, but the Berlin book does, a very comprehensive one. And we do have this excellent walking tour of.
Yeah, this walking tour is excellent. Yeah, this is a wonderful walking tour where you see most of the highlights of the major sites in this neighborhood, because this neighborhood survived almost completely intact from before the war because it was outside the bombing range. So 95% of the buildings in this neighborhood are original. And when I moved in this neighborhood, this is where I live. I moved here 24 years ago. The neighborhood was horrible. 80% of the buildings were burning coal. It was like Mary Poppins. And today it's the trendiest neighborhood in the city. So they're beautiful markets, cute stores. It's one of the most charming neighborhoods in the city. Absolutely.
And I would say it's a quintessentially Berlin neighborhood in many ways.
Yes, because before the war, these were actually tenements. They look like charming buildings today. Before the war, this neighborhood had one of the highest population densities per capita of any place in Europe. And many times you didn't have your own bathrooms. You might have 500 square foot apartment, 15 people living in it. But today it's completely changed and it's become, again, just re-gentrified and an incredibly charming neighborhood.
Well, let's get started then and see a bit of what's in your area. This is a water tower.
This is a water tower. This neighborhood had the first underground sewer and water system in Berlin. That's why it was so famous. It had clean sewers, clean water. And this is the old water tower, which has been converted into apartments. And this is where I take my dog and we take our dog and we play on the playground there. And this is also in the neighborhood. This was predominantly a Jewish neighborhood before the war. This is the largest synagogue in Berlin, which survived World War II, and one of the largest in Germany is in this neighborhood. It was not touched on the night of broken glass in 1938, Kristallnacht, because it was in a courtyard of a building. So this synagogue was not burned, because if you would have burned this synagogue, all the surrounding buildings would have caught fire. So it is, if you go here, and you can go here for services Friday night, depending on the time of the year, it's between 6 and 7 o'clock in the evening. Just have to bring your passports. This facility is spectacular to go see, and to see how beautiful the synagogue was before the war.
Mm. Yeah, incredible interior. And you have a video of just in front of the synagogue, I believe, and you can tell us a bit more as we play.
This is the street that the synagogue is on. This is a winter scene of it. And you can see how charming this neighborhood, again, if you close your eyes, you couldn't tell if you were in Paris or Berlin. This is what this entire city used to look like before the war. This is the front of the synagogue. There's a school there. And in the courtyard of the building is where the synagogue. It was a synagogue that was during East German times also. And it's still, it's a symbol of Jewish endurance in Berlin. And it's in a peaceful courtyard right off the main square. In Berlin, one thing Berlin is famous for is courtyards after courtyards after courtyards. That's why when you're in Berlin, I strongly recommend, just if you're not sure, just walk into the courtyard and see what's inside of it, because this is a city that's completely wonderful to explore. And you can, and no, people might say, what are you doing here? But it's totally okay to be in them.
And
this is
yeah, speaking of courtyards, well, this looks, well, it's not quite a courtyard. It's either a garden or a park, would you say?
correct. This is a park called Kollwitzplatz. This is a neighborhood in Prenzlauer Berg. And Katie Kollwitz was a very famous artist whose son was killed in World War I. She became a pacifist, so the Nazis banned her art. Much of her art is very kind of sad and depressing, very imaginative art. And she and her husband lived in this neighborhood. That's why the neighborhood is named in her honor today.
And there's a museum with her art. Is that true?
Yes, there is.
Mm-hmm.
There's a museum. It's moved several times. The current location is, I believe, a temporary location. They're looking for a permanent home again.
And nearby are these Stolperstein, you can correct me, stones. Can you tell us a bit about those?
Yes, these were originally designed by an artist called Gunther Deming. And there's almost 100,000 of these in continental Europe now. And these are the places where originally they were just for Jews, but now they're for all the groups of people, whether they be homosexuals or disabled or handicapped or Sinti and Roma, where they were living. It says each one has a name on it, and it said, here lived this person, Joseph Mandel. It has the date of his birth and where he was deported and murdered. All the memorials in Germany talk about people being dragged and murdered. This is a society which really talks a great deal about its past and memorialization. Each bracket commemorates a place where they lived. It says deported, murdered. They're found throughout Berlin. There's 9,000 of them installed in Berlin, 40,000 in Germany. And it's considered the world's largest decentralized memorial of its kind in the world. And the nice thing about them is you walk with history because you're paying attention to what's under your feet.
Mm-hmm.
There's something missing here. This is something you see throughout Europe. These memorials are called tripping stones or stumbling stones, and they're everywhere. Everywhere you walk around in Berlin and in Germany, you're going to find these, and in most European countries.
Yeah, you never know what you're going to find when you look down. That's for sure. And it's
things are at your feet when you're not looking.
Yeah, exactly. And just around the corner is an orphanage. What is the story behind the Auerbach orphanage that we'll see next, Jeremy, in your neighborhood?
It's a former site of a Jewish orphanage in Berlin. Children were here until 1942. This is one of my offbeat favorite memorials in the city because it includes a haunting metal sculpture with children's faces on it. Its small plaque explains the history of it. And it's a place where passersby can come in, they can read about it. It's in English and in German, because this talks about what happened in the neighborhood, and it talks about how engaged Berliners are in dealing with their past. And it integrates memory into everyday life. And you see the names of the children on it and what their ages were. And all these children were deported in 1942 and murdered. So none of them, only a few of them survived. But it's a hidden memorial in one of the courtyards, directly across from where the Jewish cemetery is in my neighborhood.
Mm. Thank you for explaining that, Jeremy. Very powerful. Moving on, this is a former brewery that's now a cultural center. Can you pronounce it Kulturbrauerei? Is that right?
Kulturbrauerei. This is the Culture Brewery. This was one of the largest breweries in Berlin before the war. This neighborhood was famous because Prenzlauer Berg, B-E-R-G, is the German word for hill. This is one of the only small little hills in Berlin. That's why this neighborhood had so many breweries in it before the war, because Berlin has a very high water table and you couldn't build basements in most parts of the city. You could in my neighborhood. So breweries were here because they could build basements to keep the beer cold. So before the war, Berlin really was a brewery city of Germany. And there are almost 10 breweries in my neighborhood alone. And this one has a fabulous museum today and fabulous nighttime events. And it's a huge cultural facility, plus one of the best museums from the DDR, from East Germany museums, one of the best ones in the city.
And after visiting here, if you get hungry, is this where you get your currywurst?
It's one of the most famous currywurst stands in the city, Knopke's. This is an institution. This is actually from East German times. This has been around for many years. They have a secret formula, and most people think it's one of the best currywurst in the city. And a currywurst is basically they take a bratwurst, they chop it up into small pieces, put ketchup on top of it, and put curry powder on top of it. They now also make vegetarian, vegan versions, chicken versions of it, so it's something for everyone. And the French fries are amazing. This is
Okay,
this, absolutely.
you heard it here first. Go to Prenzlauer Berg for your currywurst in Berlin.
And then some of the buildings in the neighborhood, not all buildings have been renovated. The picture on the left, you can see buildings are still, looks like the war ended 15 minutes ago. There are still buildings in this neighborhood that have not been touched yet. That's why this neighborhood is still interesting. There are still a few examples you can find. And also on the right, one of the largest pieces of Berlin Wall left in the city is in this neighborhood also, in Mauer Park, where on Sunday they have one of the best flea markets in the city is in this neighborhood also.
And the Berlin Wall Memorial is near here too, right, Jeremy?
Right. Berlin Wall Memorial is on Bernauer Strasse also. Very totally worthwhile seeing it. It's one of the only places in the city that shows both the inside and the outside wall of the Berlin Wall.
Well, Jeremy, this is the end of our walking tour of your neighborhood. Thank you so much for guiding us through the area where you live. Are you very far right now from where we've been walking?
I'm about 2 blocks from where the synagogue is, and I'm about 1 block from the water tower, and where the Mauer Park is, I'm about 4 or 5 blocks away.
Okay, incredible. Yeah, thank you very much. Next, we will go to some Berlin experiences, because I think that's a wonderful way to think about travel is what experiences do you want to have? Or if you are interested in Berlin, what kind of experiences can you enjoy there? And here we see a river cruise on is it the Spree River?
Correct. Highly recommended. The Spree River cruises are fabulous. They have them in German and English and several different languages. When the weather is nice, it's a delightful place because you can order something to drink on them. They have them for a range of lengths and sizes for everyone. I even do it every year. This is one of my favorite things to do in Berlin because you see a city from the river side of the city. It's a completely different view. Great thing to do late in the afternoon. The Reichstag, it's a must-see. You have to go visit the Reichstag. That's the front of the building.
And of course, you can hire a tour guide. You can either join a tour, you can hire a tour guide, such as Jeremy, and we've put his link to his website, theberlinexpert.com, in the chat, and it will be in the follow-up email as well. So that is a fine Berlin experience to enjoy also.
Yeah, I love what I do. I'm very lucky. I don't know anybody likes his job as much as I like mine.
And biking, you mentioned it earlier, Berlin is flat, so rent a bike. And now, is there a good bike rental service through the city, or would you go to a bike rental shop?
There are bike rental stores all throughout the city. If you want to just rent the bike and do it yourself, there are bike tours you can also take. They're organized. You can find those online. But Berlin is a complete bike-friendly city. Many people don't wear helmets in the city. So if you want to have a helmet, you'd probably have to ask extra or bring your own.
Mhm.
I wear one, but most people don't. But there are more bicycles here than cars again. It's a
Mhm.
complete bike-friendly city.
And we should talk about food because there are some Berlin specialties like this Berliner. These are donuts, correct?
These are jelly-filled donuts, and this is a must-have when you come to Berlin. You have to be extremely careful when you're eating them because they inject the jelly on one side of them. So if you bite the wrong side, you get it all over yourself. But they're delicious, and they have them all around and they're called Pfannkuchen or Berliners. But you can find these basically throughout the entire city all the time. Very, very totally fun to eat.
And of course, beer is a
Yeah.
must if you drink at least.
Beer in Germany is delightful because most beer in Germany does not have preservatives in it.
Hmm.
It tastes it. Most people who come to Germany say, "Wow, it tastes different here than it does other places." And they have all sorts of non-alcoholic beers. They have beers that have lemon in it. They mix with Sprite. They have all sorts of different types of ways to drink beer, and it's really, really delightful on a warm day. Highly recommended to go to a beer garden here. There's many beer gardens in town.
Many places to sit down and eat as well. And oh, this must be well, either a hot dog or a currywurst. Very
As
popular.
well, this is what Germans think when you come. Americans think when you come to Germany, you have to eat a hot dog or a bratwurst or something like that. This is what everyone expects to find here in Germany. Absolutely.
And is this currywurst here?
Currywurst. That's exactly what it should look like. And there's different forms and to eat it and to buy it. And most people eat it standing up. And there's some that are listed on social websites that say are the must places. This is like saying everyone has their favorite currywurst stand. I think that every neighborhood has good ones. I don't think you need to run across town to find it. You just have to ask the locals, where do you get your currywurst?
Or go to the recommendation you provided in your neighborhood.
Exactly.
And then modern cuisine in Berlin is quite delicious as well.
The cuisine in Germany is changing because Berlin has become a foodie city, unbelievably, and there's food for everyone here, and the quality of food is excellent. The selection is amazing, and what people find when they come to Berlin is you can do the food here is wonderful and much, much less expensive than you find in other European cities comparatively.
And we must mention our friend here, the Ampelmann. What is the story of the Ampelmann on the light?
And they had different crosswalk men that don't walk signs in East Berlin than they did in West Berlin. He's the former East Berlin. He was supposed to be a short, fat little policeman. And they did psychological studies that people were less likely to jaywalk if there was a policeman standing there. So he became the crosswalk guy from East Berlin. When the wall fell, they started replacing everything in the east with what they had in the west. It even came down to the Ampelman. So he is now considered the symbol of Berlin because he has gone from east to west, and he's the symbol of walk, don't walk. So when you want to buy T-shirts or something, when you want to buy gifts, this is the only thing you'll find in Berlin that you won't find anywhere else. This is definitely the symbol of Berlin.
And, Berlin is a fun, vibrant city for young people as well. And that's something that has really come about in recent years, wouldn't you say, Jeremy?
Berlin is become one of the nightlife capitals of Europe because there's no closing hours in bars and restaurants. So you can basically go out almost any time of the night or day. Some bars open up, some discos and techno clubs open Thursday and don't close till Monday or Tuesday. They're open the entire time. So this is a very, very big nightlife city. And there's something to do for every age group, or there's something to do.
Thank you, Jeremy, for taking us through a few of the extra must-knows and things to do and experiences in Berlin. Let's get to a few questions. Gabe has been busy sending me some of the questions submitted in the Q&A. Thank you, everyone, for asking them, and Gabe for sending them to me. I would like to start with a basic travel question from Clara. Does Uber operate in Berlin?
Yes, it does. There's Uber. There's also another service called Bolt. There's two of them. They're both price competitive with each other. And there's also an app that people could download called Free Now, which is a taxi service, which is competitive with them. And you get a fixed price on a taxi. It's just like Uber, but you're getting a taxi.
Elizabeth asks if Berlin has Christmas markets. And you mentioned one earlier on the square, but it must have others as well because it's so large.
There's probably 15, 20 Christmas markets in the city. They open the last Monday in November, and they're open for 4 weeks. They usually open. Most of them are open until, let's say, the 24th of December, and they're totally delightful. They're completely worth a visit to Germany and Berlin to see them.
George asks, does Berlin have a strange smell? Because it sounds like he heard on warm, moist days, there can be an unusual odor. Is that true?
Sometimes, because there is no downhill in Berlin. So that is why the water company here in Berlin has to pressurize the pipes. And the water pressure in Berlin is unbelievable. And they also have to flush the sewers out because there's no downhill for everything to run out of the sewers. So occasionally when it gets backlogged, there is a sewer smell occasionally in the center city of Berlin. It doesn't happen often, but occasionally it does. And the city usually takes care of it pretty quickly, but it can happen.
I did not experience that when I went there, so it must not always occur, as you said.
Right, exactly. Not every day.
We have a question from Susan about hotels. Do they usually have air conditioning? Is that even needed based on the weather there in the summertime?
That is a very, very good question because this is a cultural thing. Germans are not big fans of air conditioning. That's why they like to have windows open in all the buildings here. I would strongly recommend if you're sensitive to warm weather, you contact a hotel and make sure it has air conditioning and ask about how low can the temperature go. Because there are hotels in town where the air conditioning will only cool to, let's say, 75 degrees. And sometimes people say they want it 68. So it really depends on if you want American style air conditioning, you're probably going to be staying in a 5-star hotel.
Jeremy, what makes a Berliner different than someone in the rest of the country? Are there many differences even?
Berliners are very different because this is the most international city in the whole country. This is like the New York of Germany. So it's over 30% of Berliners don't have German passports. And you don't really need to speak German in this city. Most German cities you have to speak German in. There's so many international people in the city that you can really get by speaking English almost the entire time. And there's people from completely around the world, and Berlin is becoming the new startup capital of Germany. So there are tons and tons of young people from all over the world in the city right now. So it's a very, very young, vibrant city. And it's one of the poorest of all the European capitals because of what most business left Berlin at the end of World War II. So it's coming back now, but it's still you can get a 5-star hotel in Berlin for the price of a 3-star in London or Paris. So that's why people like Berlin so much, because it's a completely dramatic, dynamic city that's changing. And it's very, very, it's full of green spaces, and it's not one city. It's a patchwork of networks. The architecture is a mix of everything. There's things everywhere in the city, and the nightlife is everywhere, and it's a complete diverse city. So LGBTQ people have no problem here in Berlin. It's communities for artists and cultural people. It's something for everybody in Berlin. That's one thing people love about it.
Thank you for mentioning how diverse and welcoming it is. That's very important.
Very.
And you compared Berlin to New York City. So perhaps to provide a different perspective on Germany, a visitor to Berlin may want to take at least a day trip. Do you have any suggested Berlin day trips?
One of the things I strongly recommend is for Berliners to visit Potsdam. Potsdam is the former royal summer palaces for the royal family of northern Germany. So Potsdam to Berlin is what Versailles is to Paris. There are palaces, beautiful gardens. It's only 25 miles west of Berlin. That's a totally worth a day trip. Dresden is 2 hours on the train. That's a day trip. Leipzig is a beautiful day trip. Hamburg is only an hour and a half on the day, almost less than 2 hours on the train here. And remember, they're speeding up all the trains in Europe now. So there are trains to Munich that are 3.5 hours, less than 4 hours to Munich now.
Wow.
So Munich, you can do as a day trip from Berlin now.
Wow. Yeah, since it's so well connected, there are a number of options. That's great. I love those recommendations. Thank you, Jeremy. Nick would like to know, how long, Jeremy, did it take you to learn German?
That's a great question because when I first came to Germany, the only two words I could say were Gesundheit and kindergarten. And it takes a long time. I went to German school for a long time, and I think the best way for me to learn German was I married a German man, and we speak German at home.
That'll do it.
Yeah, I speak German at home. So occasionally I'm fumbling for English words because I speak German at home.
I love that. Well, Jeremy, I will just ask you one more question. Susan would like to know what you would like the visitor to Berlin to take away. What is the one thing that you want a traveler visiting Berlin to remember, realize, learn about?
I would think the most important thing is that Berlin is very different. People come to Berlin to experience the history. It's not a pretty city, it's an interesting city. And they come away thinking, wow, most European cities don't change at all. How much is Paris or Prague going to change? There's no room to make changes. Where Berlin is in the constant reinventing itself all the time. And that's why there's a saying in Berlin, if you haven't been here in 5 years, you wouldn't recognize the city. People have to come explore Berlin. Other cities are easy to see. This one you have to really experience. You have to be like Rick says, there's a difference between being a tourist, a traveler, and a pilgrim. This is a city you have to be a pilgrim in because the more you come here, the more you're going to explore and find how wonderful the city really is.
Oh, that's beautifully said. And I can also agree that Berlin is worth more than one visit. It has many layers. Thank you so much, Jeremy.
Pleasure.
Okay, well, I am so grateful to you for taking all this time to join us at 3 a.m. Now it must be what, 4 o'clock? Is the sun coming up yet? You're so far north, 52
Yeah,
degrees.
a little bit, it's getting a little bit light. It's not come up yet. In about 20 minutes, it'll be light outside.
Well, we will let you go for the evening. Thanks a lot, Jeremy. Take care. I hope
Pleasure.
that some of our viewers will see you in Berlin when they next visit.
Pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much.